I want us to consider then the preparation for reasonable adjustments. How should we be prepared in their application? Well, first of all, we need to be able to identify the learners who require adjustment. We need to be able to establish specific needs that they have. They're the key things. Who are the learners that need adjustment? What specifically do they need? These are different things, because you can identify a learner very clearly, perhaps, for needing an adjustment, but in terms of assessment context, what is the need? What do they need to have? We need to be able to establish those needs, identify who the learners are, and it's your responsibility to have effective processes to do that. It's your legal responsibility to have effective screening processes to identify who needs an adjustment and what adjustment should be applied. And that should be a demonstrable process. You can say, this is what we do, this is how it works. Okay, so first of all, identifying learners. The timescale. Learners should be encouraged to make any access-related assessment needs known to the centre at the earliest opportunity. So timing is very, very important. If you are unable or fail to identify the learner prior to their engagement in assessment, then that learner is affected. They're missing out. We want the learners to be able to engage as early as possible. We don't want learners sitting at the back feeling they're left out, feeling that they're hiding something. Learners often could feel ashamed of an issue that may identify them as unique within the class. We need to be able to encourage learners to make clear that they have an issue and that it's not an embarrassment, it's not a process of humiliation for them. Where permissions are required, and we'll come to permissions later, but where permissions are required for an adjustment, and a permission is when you have to apply to OCNI 2 before you apply that, these should be identified 10 working days prior to assessment. Now, if you've previously been to internal verification or assessment training or read the paperwork, it was 45 days. This is now 10 days. So this is a change that's come into play. And 10 days hopefully is more reasonable. Now, I would add at this point that if you fail to do this within 10 days, fail to make a permission within 10 days, please don't just ignore it and brush it under the carpet. Do it anyway. That is really, I don't want to be stepping out of line here. My take on it is, we want you to do it 10 days before, but that is to push you to find them. It's something to incentivise you to get out there and find the learners as early as possible. Okay? For this reason, you must have screening processes. Another reason why. Not just legal reasons. If it's going to work, you need to be able to find these learners nice and early. Centres are responsible to ensure that their staff are fully conversant with the requirements of reasonable adjustments. So if you are involved in recruiting, advising, guiding potential learners, you need to be aware of that, of what goes on here. It's a centre's responsibility to make sure you know about these things. And so we're glad to see you here today. But this is something the centre needs to do. The centre is responsible, and training of staff, ensuring competence of staff is a responsibility. Identification of learners should be a transparent process. It should be done in conjunction with learners. It shouldn't be something which we do behind a desk without consulting the learner. In that way, the learners are empowered within the process. If you feel a learner needs an adjustment and we don't talk to them about the adjustment, we don't consult with them, then they will not feel a part of the process and may not be willing to engage within the process as well as they might be otherwise, and outcomes won't be as good. So we want them to be involved in the process. Learners will know best what the effect of their particular issue or disability is and how they do things best. So you want to find out what they have to say on the issue. You consult them. Okay, establishing needs. We want to make sure, as I said, the standards are maintained. It's the learner's normal way of working. It may be that simple adjustments are all that is required. You may find that in looking at what standards we want to apply in terms of adjustment, then it may be something very simple. But we need to establish standards of working that will be consistent. The same learner may not require the same adjustment for all types of assessment. It may well be assessment specific, as we mentioned already. For example, a dyslexic learner may need extra time to complete a written test, but not for a practical activity. Your adjustments are specific, which is why in their recording and processing, we need you to do them specifically. So group reporting of adjustments, if you have a number of people or over a number of courses, is not appropriate. We need to have specific reporting. A learner doesn't have to be disabled to require a reasonable adjustment, and not every learner that is disabled will be entitled to one or need one. So be careful of that. Just because a learner may identify themselves as registered disabled, it may be that they do not need the adjustment. Okay, when the adjustment of the requirements of a learner are unclear, if you feel that you're not sure about what to do, and there are situations that will arise which are not clear, such as life. There may be greyish areas where we're not sure what we should do here. Should we apply an adjustment? What adjustment should we apply? Do involve specialists. There are people who you can take advice from, not least from OCNNI. Do not be afraid to pick the phone up and ask Lisa what you should do. Should you apply an adjustment? What the recommendation would be? Or if you have others that you may be aware of or be in contact with who have specialist knowledge in the area, consult them. We don't want you making assumptions. We want you to make the decisions correctly. We want you to be doing the right thing, and so please consult people if you need to. Okay, so that gives us an overview of need, establishing need, and identifying the learners. So how are we going to do this? Screening processes. As we've mentioned, you need to have them in place. It may be for a lot of centres that you have referrals from other organisations. It depends very much on what sort of organisation you are. Mentioned there, you may have referrals from social services, from youth justice. You may have referrals from schools or other educational bodies. And quite often, when you have a referral, you will have accompanying information with regard to the learner. It may be their disability coded. You may have information there which you can view and you can consider in identifying the need of adjustment, who the learner is. It may flag them up. We hope that will be the case. So referral of learners can be a big advantage in terms of screening. And please, if you receive referrals of learners, please make sure that these issues are raised, are flagged up. You should have a registration process for your learners. So, as well as being referred to you, you need to be registering your learners. You presumably will be taking details of your learners, what their names are, their addresses. You have to do this for their registration with OCNNI. So you could structure your enrolment process to capture information which could be useful for identifying the need of reasonable adjustment. That can be left in your capable hands. You presumably will have your own process there, but please do that. Please make sure that learners, when they register with you, are specifically asked to identify any particular needs they may have, which may require reasonable adjustment, and make them aware of the process, that the process is available to them. Okay, the route for some centres, especially those funded by Dell, you will be required to develop individual learning plans. It may be as a practice of your centre that you will be developing a route for them, a progression. That is another way of addressing the issue, of looking at particular needs of learners and considering what adjustments, even at that stage, may be required for them to be able to engage in that route of learning, in that plan. Hopefully will address that issue. That your learning pathway should have sufficient depth to identify this need. If you're developing these documents, excellent. That will be a great advantage to you in feeding into this process. Okay, raising the issue. If all else fails, if you can raise the issue of reasonable adjustments with your learners, then that will be a great advantage too. Do you mention them? Mention reasonable adjustments to your learners? Do you talk to them about the availability of them? We should be raising them directly with learners, raising the issue directly with learners prior to commencement of learning. And induction is a great time to do that. When you induct your learners, presumably you're explaining the process of assessment, you're going to be explaining what they're going to achieve, what the outcome at the end of the course will be. You'll be explaining a whole range of issues directly related to their learning and assessment. So this is an excellent opportunity to raise the issue of reasonable adjustments. And so please do that. We would like your induction process to be a documented one, to ensure that it's consistently applied across your centre. Now, if you have a big centre, this is all the more important because you've lots of assessors speaking to groups of learners. They may have their own patter that they deliver at the start of each course, their own induction. We want to make sure that the content of those inductions is consistent, and to have a written induction checklist that includes reference to reasonable adjustments so that we can be sure that it's raised is an advantage. It would be a great advantage in ensuring your compliance legally, a great advantage in ensuring your compliance to OCN, that you're doing everything you can to anticipate and identify the need of reasonable adjustment. And then review. It may be that these processes fail. It may be that you've done all you possibly can prior to the assessment to identify need. You've spoken to learners. It's still a hidden thing. This is quite possible. This is something which could well happen. Please be on your guard and review your learners. Are issues manifesting that that you missed earlier? Are they quiet? Are they not engaging? Are there learners there which you feel may need some appropriate help to enable them to engage that hasn't been raised? So please review the system, review your process during training. It may be technically too late for a permission. Nonetheless, we want you to do it. Okay? Please still follow procedures. And if you have genuinely a process there to identify learners, to screen them, and you can genuinely say that it hasn't worked, either it's robust, but in this case it hasn't worked, we still want you to follow the process. Feel free to admit there's been a failing. It can be a part of your quality review of your screening processes. Still put in the permission to do it, to apply the adjustment. And as mentioned before, special considerations are not a safety net for failed screening procedures. Okay, so that's not what they're there for. Special considerations are different, and we do not want you to think that they're there to allow you to be lax in screening learners, identifying learners. So they are some suggested screening processes that we would like to see in place. It may be that you can think of other ways within your centre of identifying learners and their needs. that we haven't mentioned here. That's all well and good. And if you do have any others, please let me know, because I'd like to know too. But maybe there's other ways within your centre you can see ways of finding learners that have this need. That's fine. What we want you to do is have a process there that will do that is functional, and that is transparent, so that we can see it, so that anyone who needs to look and see what you're doing can clearly see that you're functioning in that.